What's going on out there, YouTube family? This is Samuel Leggett here. I got my man Lucas. This is it. Episode 10, full circle, Lovecraft Country, the season finale. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a viewer discretion is advised with this review. I normally never do that. But to be fair, throughout this entire season, I've made sure that Lucas tries to put as good of a filter as possible. And I think he's done an amazing job going through. So I give him all the accolades with this. This is not that time. So Lucas will have no filter. Anything goes. So if you feel away, don't be offended. Okay. We're really just giving our raw, unadulterated perspective on this episode, and honestly, just to resolve the season in our heads as a whole in general. So, all right, so let's go ahead and just kind of break it down. So from the last episode, your boy Montrose and Letty, and of course your boy Tick, go back into the past. They steal the book. And from stealing the book, the whole purpose behind this is for them to try to go and save D, which obviously, in my still personal opinion, they don't really care much about D.
Clearly they don't.
In this episode, they really they seem like they're gonna try to make an effort. They start doing the kind of the motions, and then they say forget it. You know what? There's a couple of deaths that we just couldn't take. We're just gonna leave this be. So anyway, but from this point, the whole game changes in the sense that they're like, okay, something worked, but her arm is still very much so infected. And Christina comes back, of course. And Christina's like, look, I need what I need. Y'all gonna either put up, shut up, or this is it. And of course, Christina, being Christina, she takes off that freaking invulnerability spell off of Letty.
Yes.
Which I was like, y'all don't have any leverage. Why would y'all even say anything to this girl? Like, if you're gonna make a move, make a move. Don't sit there and like antagonize this chick that's already evident on killing it. Anyway, from that point, that goes and puts our quote unquote heroes or villains, depending on who you are, in a situation where now they need to protect each other and they only have each other to rely on. What did we think about this episode, Lucas? Just from that point, off the first half of this
it was
episode.
Bad. It was really, really bad. That's the thought of this. Again, with the switching of tone from episode to episode. At one point in time, in the early beginning of this episode, I thought it can go down the tone of episode 4, because that's what it felt like. Like they were going on another hunt. It gave us another unnecessary music cue. Like it did everything to lead us down the path of episode 4. And then they just decided, nope. If we've been switching tones this entire season, we're going to do it in this episode as many times as humanly possible. Like, the sad part is with episode 9, the way they built up Montrose, I kind of wanted to see more of him. And then they said, nope, he don't matter. We're all going to act like now we care about D. You ain't cared about her this entire goddamn series. But here you're going to act like you care about this kid for no reason. Like, she literally became the focal point of the show at the end of episode 8. You completely changed the focus of the show. And it just made me mad because there's certain things they could have done to pay off, and they just chose to make it a endgame. Lovecraft Country endgame.
Yeah, it definitely felt like they were trying to tip this scale of an endgame situation. Now, one thing I'll say, again, me and Lucas are going to go back and forth with this. Lucas hasn't heard my perspective on it at all. One thing I liked about this specific scene with the mom and D, I was like, D, you better not give her no slack. You should go and just go ham on you. I know it's your mama, but she left you straight up. I was like, I would have been pissed if she would have just let that slide. And thankfully, D was like, nah, fam, you left me. Get out of my face. I can't write. I've been possessed. I don't know what's wrong with you, but you obviously don't care about me. And I was waiting for that. I was waiting for D to really just kind of just let it all out. And I'm glad that they did. Now, did that come to any kind of resolve? No.
Yep.
Because technically the mom was like, oh, we can fix this. You know what I'm saying? You can make sure I'll make sure you'll be able to write again. Now, their resolution for that was to give Dee
Exactly.
to give Dee a science fiction robotic arm that we never really got to see how
in the 1950s. In the 1950s,
she amputated the arm and gave her this. Now, to be fair, I don't even know. They never gave us an understanding the physiology of Hippolyta's body. She's literally got stuff in her freaking body that allows her to be able to generate electricity, and I don't know what her limitations are because they don't clearly define it. And that would have been an amazing science fiction moment if that was like all of a sudden, like you realize she's not even human anymore. Like she starts to have stuff coming out of her that whatever that creature was, you know, that had the black face and the afro, that was what she became. And that would have been a great moment to pay off because then it's like, okay, that Hippolyta episode wasn't for nothing. We get to really see what she is. We're just left to assume that, you know, she just did this, as opposed to if we're going off of the evidence of what we actually have seen, that's not something that's even possible or plausible in the show because never seen it. So
and she brought back future tech.
Yes,
she literally had to bring back future tech to build that arm for Dee.
Yeah, and we have no real understanding of did she take Dee to the future and bring it back, or she have it in her
she
body?
Said she did say that in the show. She said we can travel anywhere. I remember that part, and I was thinking then like, oh, so you turned your daughter saying you left me into, well, I traveled around the world. It's like her complaint was that you left her, like you left her. And you flipped that to mean to give us Hippolyta talking about her life and the things that she discovered, and that she's going to make Dee a magical arm to make up for ruining her first arm.
Yeah.
And the only reason we know Dee has a robotic arm, the only reason we knew at the end she had a robotic arm is because they abandoned her again. That's why we knew she had it. Come on, man.
Yeah. And that's a good segue into the next character. But one thing I wanted to tag on with that is, this is going to be real stuff to say. If Hippolyta was right, she's like, I can go anywhere in time. I call myself mother to come back to you. Now, if it was me and I was Dee, I'd be like, wait, you can go anywhere in time? I would have questioned, wait, why didn't you go before this even happened to me? Before you left and stop any of this from happening? Better yet, you know what? Take me back there and let's just stop all this from happening right now. We can save everybody. If you really can time travel, let's do that. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why I think they didn't show it is because that would have been something that would have been a whole more interesting plot. Like, okay, now there's a sacrifice that has to be made. Okay, Dee's the only person that can go back to tell everybody. That would have been a really interesting story, but they didn't do that.
Let's go back to episode 8 for a minute there, Sam.
Uh-oh.
When she arrives back and she explains to them that she's been through 200 years in the future. She can see everything. She knows everything. Wouldn't she have known that this was going to happen at Dee?
Bruh, they never even had that conversation, though. They never even had that conversation. If I was Tick, or if I was Dee, or even, honestly, low-key, out of everybody, Montrose. If I was Montrose, I feel like, wait. Because this is the weird thing about Montrose. Montrose questions everybody. Because Montrose is very intelligent. He really is. Like, I give him all the credit. This entire season, I love his character. Out of everybody, he's my favorite character. It's crazy to say. But he never once questioned Hippolyta. Now, you could call it guilt or whatever, but he never was like, where you been? What are you? And, you know, what is really going on with you? Like, nobody ever questioned that. And I think that did a disservice to the character as much as even the actress. And I don't know. But anyway, I wanted to segue because one of the things that Dee does at the end of the episode is you find out that the guardian that was protecting Tick has now been passed on to her. We never saw that. We don't really understand a lot of that, and I still don't understand why Tick and Letty went through a baptism. It doesn't anyway. But long story short, Dee goes with the creature on a dying pedestal of Christina, and she just like Christina's like begging for her life. Yeah, yo, help me out. I tried to help you. Like, at least let me go. And they like, in my personal opinion, this is unfiltered. I apologize if this offends anybody, but they painted Dee to be this person that throughout most of these circumstances, the one thing that she got and understood is that, you know, she's in this for herself as a Black woman, that no, she can't let, you know, this Caucasian woman or anybody else to put her through the ringer. When really, if I was Dee, like, yo, I can't trust my family. I can't trust anybody. I got to look out for me, if anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if that was the case, it would have made more sense for her to actually try to save Christina, to figure out, you know what, can you bring Tick back? That's the only way I'll let you live. That would have been an interesting thing. But instead, she crushes Christina's neck and just kills her. She's dead. Like, Christina is done. Which is the segue again to this whole entire arc. Now, this is my biggest negative about this episode, and honestly might be the whole entire season since episode 5. What was the purpose of this? Now, after everything is done, after everything is said and done, what was the purpose of of Christina and Ruby?
Nothing. And I want someone, you know what? I want somebody in the comments to tell me I'm stupid, tell Sam he's stupid, and give us a reason that this relationship ever needed to exist. They go lengths to show you how much Christina does not care. Then they show you how much she does care for some weird reason. And then they give us nothing. Their whole setup has no payoff in the end. None. Except for it ends with Ruby kind of dead in a comatose state. That's it. Nothing else.
I mean, she's certifiably dead based on what they said about William. Like, she's done. Like, there's nothing. And this is the weird thing about the whole entire thing. The conversation that Ruby had with Letty at the cemetery, I actually liked that conversation because I was like, this is real, finally. You know, like, they ain't bullcrapping. Like, Ruby really let Letty know how she felt. Again, the show has moments that make sense. And then they find a way to just, like, switch that joint all the way back. Because the whole conversation was like, Letty was like, you know what? Like, you're my sister, and, you know, I love you. And I was like, Letty, I don't know if you've been paying attention since the first episode. Ruby told you how she felt. Your brother even told you how he felt. What makes you think she has any loyalty to you when, honestly, you ain't even cared about what's happening to her? There's never been a conversation asking, you know, what is your relationship with Christina? How are you really feeling? You know, what you've been transforming into a white woman. Why? You know, like, it's always been about what Letty, and that's the thing. They said it in the first episode. I give them credit for that. They said in the first episode, Letty has been for Letty. Letty's been all over the place. And that's the entire season she's been doing that. The difference is she's been going all over the place with Tick. And even technically, they've been orbiting each other. They ain't even been doing it together because, honestly, the first time they told each other they loved each other is when Tick died. But we'll get to that. We ain't got there yet. But in terms of this situation, I was like, yo, Ruby, you tell her. You know what I'm saying? But to be fair, Letty was like, do you really love Christina? Like, is she using you? And you know what? I think Ruby at that point was like, probably. But I'm probably better off with Christina than you because y'all know some foolish. And yet, after all that, Ruby, which we don't see, is told through exposition that Christina was like, yeah. And weird thing, I don't know if you caught it, Lucas, that Christina was Ruby or not. I don't know if she actually caught it or not. But
yeah,
when they had that conversation, and like Christina's like, man, if you would just kept your sister out of it, she wouldn't have to die. I was like, Ninja, what was all this for this whole entire time? What did you need Ruby for? Like I was like, this whole conversation makes Christina's character non-valuable in every way, shape, or form. No specific cares in the world after that one conversation. Because I was like, Ruby, what did you do? What did you do? And I mean, I guess she, in some way, shape, or form, during the flashback, they showed that she made some kind of sacrifice for Letty to get, I guess, the invulnerability back in the event of something happening to her. But it was just like, it was so fast and flash. It was just so poorly executed, bro. Like, it just made no sense. And in honesty, it deters the character Ruby, which was a great character. Like, they should have just showed Christina just straight up kill her, as opposed to the way she went out.
Yes, and kill her with emotion behind it. Because you get early in the episode when Tick and Letty resurrect racist white man and bunch of black people, we see then when they crash the car that Christina cares about Ruby. Why don't we get to see her have to kill her or encompass anything that she does? We needed to see that. That brings emotional weight to the character. Instead, because everything happens off screen, we don't care. And it's because they wanted to set it up like it was some big surprise. That
they sacrificed it for a twist.
A twist that an idiot could see coming a mile away. The moment they show both of them two, like in the next scene, you're like, oh, that's not Ruby. Like, it was so obvious. And then normally with a twist, you let it play out some. They literally let it play out in under a minute. And Letty, because she is super smart Negro. She just figured it out with no hesitation. It's like, come on, man.
It's I was just like, because
they made two characters pointless. The last episode made two characters completely pointless. Ruby and Christina became completely pointless by the end of this episode. Could anyone honestly tell me what was Christina's point of doing anything in this series? Because you knew she was going after the book. You knew that she wanted to be immortal. What was the real point of it, though? Did we ever have an actual end-game mention for her? Or
because what was the reason why she involved Ruby from the jump? What was the reason?
Because she was a woman and she wanted to be powerful. Is this like a woman thing where you did this to I am woman, hear me roar? Like, is this why you sexually changed this character? Because that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like at this point.
But see, that don't even add up either, because like let's give it a hypothetical, right? Christina changed herself to William, found Ruby, right? Maybe during that moment she was like, "Oh, I can use this chick so I can be able to get my book because I know it's tied to this person's, sister." But throughout the whole entire time that she's even working with Ruby, she never asked Ruby to do anything against the Ruby. There's never a moment that she asked her, "Okay, go spy on them, go do this." It's always been, I'm trying to bring something out of you that you don't see about yourself. And I was like, why set all that up to deter both of these characters, bro?
Because it's a woman empowerment thing. I don't care what nobody say. You can't give me another reason. Christina doesn't like Negroes. She don't like Negroes. That is pretty. She laughed when she went through what happened to Emmett Till. She don't like Negroes. Why did this relationship really have to exist then?
Well, so, I'm not going to say she laughed. Maybe this is going to sound bad. Hopefully the actors don't hear this. Maybe
if she
maybe this is a discredit to
if
the
she
actress.
Can't display, I know what you're about to say. If she is unable to display emotion properly, where you can't tell if she's laughing or crying, she's a horrible actress. Absolutely horrible.
That's what I'm trying to be real sensitive about that. But to be fair, there's never been a moment. The dialogue speaks for her to emote, right? But there's never moments where the actress actually really truly emotes. Never. Like, there's never a moment. I feel like the character William emotes more than Christina.
Really?
And it might be a slight to the actress, because even in her dying moments, that wasn't an emotion. That was desperation, but it wasn't like, oh God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, it was nothing.
The moment she said, D, help me. And I'm like, oh, so she just like regularly talking. Not a tear in her eye, not a sad gleam in her eye that she's on death's door. Nothing of that nature. Nothing at all. So if she is unable to show her talent, that we can't tell if she's laughing or crying, that's her fault. And that's their fault for not being able to pull it out of her. That's what the problem is. Pull out better performances out of people. You have naturally good actors. You've made Jonathan Majors cry his way through this show, because that's the only emotion he ever showed was him crying. As much as Juicy Smoulet's sister, the only emotion she showed was angry, powerful black woman. That's it. You gave us nothing else. Nothing else. The only person who did anything with his performance was Michael K. Williamson. But he does it all the time anyway. He can act in any situation. But these other people who are very talented, extremely talented, and y'all couldn't pull a decent performance out of any of them?
Yeah, it's weird though, because you got like episode 6, the character Gia, played by Jamie Chung, gave probably one of the best performances of her career.
The best performance.
And it's like they sacrificed her character again in this episode, because they used her in two different terrible ways. The last time they used her at the end of the episode was to be the conduit and the facilitator of getting the darkness and bringing it back to Christina, which in some way, shape, or form didn't make any bit of sense, because I was like, where the darkness even coming from?
None.
Anyway.
No sense at all.
They just used her as a bridge. And I was like, first of all, when they were having this fight montage, oh God, when they were having the fight montage, right? And I haven't even, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but I gotta bring this up. When she was having her fight montage, and I was like, shouldn't you be using like your abilities? Like, again, I mean, maybe you gotta kiss somebody or something, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're the only one that technically got powers up in here.
Does she have to kiss someone? Because at the end with the darkness, she didn't kiss anybody.
Then this is the thing about that whole fight, bruh. If I was Letty, okay, I know I'm pregnant, right? I know I don't have any invulnerability spell. If I'm pregnant, I'm not gonna try to get in any. If I have to, yes. But every single punch that's being thrown at me, I would be terrified. And there was nothing about that fight that left me. And I know Journey can act. I know she can act. But they were like, oh, these women just gonna slug it out. I was like, bro, she's pregnant, dog. What in the world? You ain't freaking out? You ain't freaking out, bro. Like, you can lose your baby. Right? Well, and I was like, that's unbelievable. That scene was just trying to be an action choreographed scene to make them superheroes, and it was dumb.
And the action
was dumb.
The choreographed action wasn't even good. That's the sad part. And as you said before, when Kamiko, when they tried to make her suck in the darkness. At that point, she might as well said, Mr. Tick, I don't feel so good. That's all she had to say. Because then I would have accepted it that this is nothing but in-game. You used her like Marvel uses Spider-Man. You don't really care about the character. You just need the character to lead to an end for Tony Stark. And Tony Stark is Atticus in this case. Like, it made no sense. You basically shitted on her entire episode with this episode. Again, you're ruining characters for no reason. Is it because you didn't know how you wanted this show to end? Because you strayed so far away from the book, and then you were stuck, and then you were trying to figure out how is this going to work for you? Because this ending was stupid. So stupid. And we didn't even talk about D reading the book. Bro. We didn't even talk about it yet, D reading the book.
Nope.
Like, it's art. I mean, is there any more interesting characters to talk about in this finale? I'm trying, in my head, I am trying to think of interesting moments in this finale, and all I can remember is the anger I had watching this finale. That's all I can think. All I can think is the anger I had watching this finale. Because while I think this is a horrible show, I at least thought with episode 9, you built up something where you can at least give a halfway decent finale, and instead, y'all shit the bed. How is this possible? Like, what was the thought process that went behind this episode? That's what I would want to know. What was the thought process that went behind this episode? What was that whole montage of them going back in the water and all this other bullshit, and then that stupid music that you had to include right there, to casting the spell, to them getting baptized, to all of this other stuff? Nothing gave us a payoff. Nothing at all.
It's weird. So again, if you are going to have an in-game scenario with the fight montage, half of these people got powers. Like, Montrose technically has read the book. He could have done like something from the book that is
did we ever really get anything from him reading the book?
I don't know.
Because
I just know that the only reason why Tick has the whatchamacallit is because of Montrose.
Because I know in episode 3, they hinted to there was a bigger story with Montrose in the book. And none of that paid off through the rest of the season.
Yeah, but again, this goes back to during that fight scene, instead of them fist fighting, if you got Hippolyta who legit, she can fight, cool. But if you could go and bring people back and forth through time, bro, you shouldn't have to fight anybody. That's like the Flash fighting somebody for no good reason when he could just move around them. You know what I'm saying? Like you had an opportunity to really do something with it, and you settled for a fist fight. But again, I got to get back to Gia, because they had him boy Tick, because Tick is gonna be the last person we talk about, and then we're done. I'm so serious. Gia went and met up with your boy Tick. Now, I said this to Lucas because this was the thing that pissed me off in this episode the most, to be quite honest with you, because 2 episodes ago, Gia came home, to this man that was gonna die. She came not to figure out whether he's dead or not. She came to help this man. Yes. And this is the same as that day, that old girl Letty was there, and they just happened to meet first, and he was like, oh crap, I got my baby mama here, and then I got this chick. Well, somebody got to get sacrificed. He went to Gia and was like, yo, everything that we did, it didn't mean nothing. Like, it was all a farce. Like, get out of my face. I was like, bruh, that's offensive, bruh. I was like, that made the character Tick seem like not just a douchebag, but just a straight up terrible person, bruh. And so then he goes, right, and calls her up, tells her to meet him at a hotel. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I was lying. Oh, I was in my emotions during that time. I was like, bro, what you want, bro? Like, you, at this point now, don't come to her, because I was upset for her. I was like, you want something from her. That's why you apologizing, because otherwise you would have been apologized a long time ago. And again, the biggest thing that we've talked about all these characters is they are selfish individuals. Yes. Minus Montrose. Everybody else is just selfish. Maybe Ruby, but I can understand her selfishness because she doesn't need to trust any of these flawed other characters. None of them. Absolutely. She doesn't have to have any kind of connection to any of them at all. So I get why Ruby is the way she is. But everybody else, if you think about D, they have been selfish, self-centered idiots most of the season. And I was like hoping, Uncle George was gonna come back. Of course, he didn't, but whatever. Even though they alluded to it with the whole Ouija board, whatever. But in that scene, I was just like, dog, bruh. Hold up. Why, Tick? Why? Why?
I gotta laugh because you really thought that was gonna pay off or something. People,
Why
you all
even
don't understand.
Why would they bring it up?
Y'all don't even understand. When we first saw these 5 episodes and they had him on the Ouija board, Sam was 1,000% sure George was coming back. Never. Listen, I'm not mad at any of this because, again, I didn't expect it to be good. And it just did bull after bull after bull after bull. Like, it. Let's talk about Tick. Let's end this on a bad note and talk about this bad human being. Like,
oh Lord,
it is. I have questions about a lot of the stuff he did here, along with the self-sacrificing. I'm assuming that's what that was supposed to be at the end.
Yeah, it was definitely a self-sacrifice. So, okay, this is the thing. This is one thing that I had told Lucas. The only reason why, only reason why I gave any credit to this episode, and I didn't talk about it in my notes review because I literally couldn't. Tick knew that when he had the conversation with his mother, when they went and had that really quick red screen moment that honestly, I guess they were just trying to save money to put it all in the red screen, whatever. But he had a really good emotional resonant moment with his mom. And he was basically like, you know what? And it made me understand Tick a little bit better throughout the whole entire season that he really knew what needed to take place, but he just didn't want to die. Like, it was all about self-preservation for him. And it's always been about self-preservation for him, whether it be emotionally, physically, or just in all this whole entire situation. It hasn't necessarily been about preserving his family. And this was the first time that he had to come to terms with that. And I thought it was a very well executed scene, but it was just so, the way that they shot it, I couldn't really get into it. It was just so red. I couldn't see the real raw emotion behind what was really happening. Anyway, from that point, I was like, you know what? This ninja might die for real. I was like, they might actually go through with it. Because me and Lucas have been going back and forth, like, they're going to find some kind of way of keeping this man alive. And they're going to go and do this and do that. And I was like, the moment when this man, like, hit, like, they freaking, man, that was like a gorgeous joint. They slashed all the way through on both, and she just bathing in this man's whole blood. I was like, first off, that first slash should have killed him. He need both. Like, he would have been dead within, 30 seconds?
Because you clearly you clearly would have had to hit a main artery at that.
Like, that, like, no matter what, like, he would have been dead within seconds. Either way, for me, I commend them for just straight up killing Tick. Now, I know that's going to sound bad because we're going to talk about the negative sides of that whole process, how they got there. But for me, I felt it a positive that they would have the balls to go and kill, Jonathan Major's character. Because, if they do have a second season now, it's not going to be with this cast. It's not going to be with, well, I mean, it could be. I don't know. They might pull some bull and bring him back to life or some craziness, and Christina's tied to it. I don't know. But I'm just saying, from what I've seen, what I know so far, I'm happy that they committed to the killing foreshadowing of what was supposed to be of killing this man. That was my positive. That, because I was like, I thought they were gonna bull crap their way through it, Lucas. I was like, they ain't gonna do it. They don't have the balls to do it. Wow. But they went on straight up, killed him, and I was like, I had to give them credit because I didn't think they would. I really didn't think they would. Straight up.
Well, the way they just killed the book, I figured why not kill him too? Like, you killed George. It's amazing that George's death in episode 2 had more impact than Tick's death in episode 10. How's that possible?
Well, I guess we're about to break that down in a second because this entire season, they've given us every single moment, not to feel empathetic or understanding to Tick, but to look at him as a very messed up, flawed, and despicable
he's the villain of the show. He's the villain.
That technically they kind of put him in this bubble like he's the hero, quote unquote. But really, like, a lot of this stuff, like, it all not just ties to him, it's the cause of him. And I think all of that could be excused if he would interact in a civil way, emotionally or socially through his family. And he just doesn't. Like, he uses people in conversation most of the time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he does have a heart most of the time, I guess. But it's a very flawed one. And it's a very fleeting emotion. It's weird because, I mean, I can tell moments where Jonathan Major's trying to convey that he cares about a character like Janae or Letty or his dad. There's moments where the actor tries to convey these raw emotions. I know he's trying. I can see it. But the way that he's written, he's not written like a hero. He's not written like a good character. Like, his open lines of dialogue are always just not. It's not conducive of somebody that really does have concern or empathy or anything. And it's weird. Like, it's the most flawed character in the show, and he's the focal point of the show at the same time. And that flaw is not like a flaw. It's like, okay, you know, have characters got flaws. Like, no, he's choosing these flaws. He's choosing to be this way. And that's what makes it hard to rally behind him any of the time. And that's the reason why Uncle George, when we first get the first 2 episodes, Uncle George, oh, shoot. Man, he's like, you know what? I'm standing up for what I believe. We deserve to be at this diner. Oh, well, my wife feels this way, but I'm going to choose to tell her over the phone, you know, maybe you should go and we should do this together next time. Or talking to his daughter, or even talking to Tick, having a moment to talk to Tick about trying to care for his own father, Montrose. Mm-hmm. They give you moments to make you be like, in less than two episodes, Uncle George is a great man. He's a great character. And that's not Tick. Technically, Montrose was presented as a better person, Tick. And I have a problem with that. Because when you sacrifice somebody that doesn't meet the standard of a civil human being, that person doesn't look like a martyr. That person doesn't look like, you know, they died for, you know, the cause. It almost looked like they were reluctant to do what they did. Almost like Christina's dad. Like, there's no difference between Christina's dad and Tick's death.
None at all.
Nothing at all. I think that's the reality of
both of them felt extremely pointless. Like, both.
I'll let you continue.
Well, to me, there's nothing else to continue. This whole setup for this last episode with Atticus and leading to the big death scene, it felt pointless. Like, you're not invested in him living enough to care. And that's the problem. The show is centered around him, and yet you've done nothing to make it an investment that he lives. Like, it was just inevitable that he would die, and then it was like, who cares? He's not that important. But in all honesty, with the way this story is shaped, he's supposed to be the most important person on this show. And it never feels that way. And that's what's so confusing about Lovecraft Country, is that I don't think they learned how to frame characters this entire season. In certain ways, you frame them in certain lights to make certain characters bounce off, and it gives that air of caring that you need to have, that air of, wow, I really need them to stay alive. Like, I really love this character. There's not a single character on this show that you feel that way about. And because you don't, and especially with the main character, you don't feel that way about it, it really makes these 10 episodes amount to nothing.
Yeah.
Because what was the impact of Atticus' death? One, it felt rushed, and that is very weird for a show that had 10 episodes for his death to feel rushed. It felt rushed at the end. It literally felt like halfway through the episode, when they have the big seance with all the family getting there together, which again, I'm not going to explain the stupidity of them deciding to have a supernatural moment in the middle of Lovecraft Country. But when we get to the end, it's like we don't even care if this man lives or dies. When it was supposedly thought that Letty died when she fell off the roof, I didn't care. I didn't think, oh my God, she's pregnant with a baby. It was more like, okay, what's next? And that's the way this entire series has worked. Everything is okay, what's next? instead of just staying in certain places and making you care more about the characters. And I could say it's because you bastards decided to change everything from the book to make this stupid show. And if you would have stuck with the book, maybe people would care about these characters. But because you didn't, you got this horrible show with these great actors that no one cares about. No one cares about. Matter of fact, the only apology made on the show was Misha Green apologizing for Montrose killing the character in episode 3. Like, that's the, and that was a stupid apology to make. And she apologized for it because it was an LGBTQ character. So you know what that tells me? That tells me you never had an actual direction on where this show needed to go.
Yeah.
Because if you did, I'm not apologizing for ending the character. Because that character it played out perfectly in the way it needed to play out with our plotting and our script. The point you apologize tells me none of that happened. You didn't know what the hell you were doing with this show. And then we get an ending that explains nothing.
Nothing
at all.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, say, I'm going to say this. This is going to sound really weird, but say, hypothetically speaking, Atticus had a episode where he wasn't in Chicago, where he wasn't with any of the other characters. This episode that they technically
you mean the future
erased.
one? The future one that they should have had with him? Okay.
And imagine him being there, right? Disconnected from everything, seeing how the future actually really is, and witnessing like his son, and taking time to just focus on the groundwork of his character. That would have been a moment where you're like, no, like, he needs to be with his son. Like, his son needs him. And, you know, like, that never happened. And so you have a whole bunch of amazingly acted moments by Jonathan Majors where he might be interacting with Montrose, where he's emotional, where he is hurt, where he is angry, but he's the victim. There may be moments where he's interacting with Letty and talking with Letty and like talking about what he's afraid of, but this is out of fear. This isn't about any kind of self-preservation for anything. This is also a victim situation. Again, one of the most sincere conversations happened in the first episode with him and Uncle George, because within that moment, it was like, yeah, he's still playing a victim mentality, but you got a little bit of his humanity as well. Not just his vanity, but his humanity and what he really felt for another individual, like what this other individual felt for him, and talked about it and actually brought it up and talked of details, not just circumstance. And maybe it may have been the way that they did the groundwork for this entire show. Is like, we got to progress it through this. We got to get through this. We got to go through this anthological way of going to the next episode that doesn't tie into anything else. And in doing that, you sacrifice these amazing connections that you have to have on a communicative level, emotional level, and they just were sacrificed. Because the reality is, and I said it, me and Lucas said it before, Atticus's relationship with Gia was more cemented in one episode than Atticus and Letty. And I'm not discrediting any of them as actors or actresses. I'm just saying how they were written and how they were presented into me. Because if you're telling me that at the end, when Letty ran up to this man and said, I love you, he might as well have said, I know. Because there wasn't anything. Like, I was like, bro, you telling me this the first time y'all said this, Jay? This whole entire time, y'all got a whole kid, y'all don't communicate, y'all don't say anything. This is the only show that I know that my brothers and sisters don't talk to each other. You don't need a cell phone, bro. Y'all live with each other. Like, how is people not having a conversation about this stuff? And for them to be the focal points of this, it's hard to care. It's hard to care. I want to, because I don't want, their baby to be without the mother or be without the father. I want to care about, how Montrose is feeling, that his son just died. But they rushed it so quick that I don't even think they gave Kenneth Williams the
Hey,
opportunity to even have that moment.
Wait. I'm just gonna say this. I'm just gonna say this right here, real quick. He's yelling for his son to get up, and they hand him a note. That should tell you everything you need to know about this show. He is screaming for his son to get up, and they hand him a note. A note. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? In that moment, that's definitely the time you should know what Tick's thoughts were to him. Not later on when they possibly lay him to rest, and then this is given to him. Not letting him sit in a mire and thinking about his son a little bit more. No. We're going to give it to you now because we need your emotions to completely shift from him dying to everybody abandoning D again because we can't be around this little nigga no more. Like, they didn't know how to do it, and that's the problem. You're rushing. Now, if they come back and say the reason that they rushed this is because of COVID-19, I may give you a break. Because maybe that explains where these missing 3 episodes to make this show good are. Because without them, I don't know what the hell this is. This is a horrible show.
It's hard because when me and Lucas started looking at this, the first 5 episodes, there was a lot of ADR. And this is you getting all the tea, you guys. I told you this is unfiltered. When we were looking at it, the first episode was pretty much complete. Yeah. But 2nd through 5 had a lot of ADR, missing VFX, and that let me know. I was like, wait, how's that possible? I was like, when are they shooting this show? I was like, oh, shoot, they still shooting this joint. And so I don't know how they shot it. They probably should have delayed it. They probably should have said after episode 5, we're going to wait till whatever time and continue it and see where it goes. But I think that they just were like, you know what, we got to get this thing out, or the show might get canceled. I don't know the circumstances.
We're gonna lose the niggas who we gave this show to for free and the free publicity that goes along with it. That's what they thought. That's clearly what they thought, because they gave this show to anybody with a YouTube, anybody with a Twitter with Black in the title of it. You had Black in there, you got access to that first episode very quickly with no issue at all. And because they needed you to hype this show up. But as Sam said, by the time we got the 5 episodes and we're looking, it was just so much stuff that was unfinished. And I wondered then, like, wait a minute, how is it that the first episode is premiering? The second episode premieres a week later, but nothing is finished on this episode yet. Like, it's crazy. Like, they ran to the last minute to finish everything. But that also tells me that there possibly wasn't 3 episodes left that they could have shot. That this was their vision. This horrible show was their vision of it. Like, we didn't even fully get a payoff of Tick going in the future and getting the real Lovecraft Country book and learning things from that. And then when we see D read it in the last episode, are you attempting to tell us it's going to be another season of this shitty show based on a future?
So because this may be our last time talking about the show, I'm going to say, and we can kind of go back and forth on it because we can end this pretty soon. I think, it's sad to say, I think that they're going to come up with another season. I think that it may not have the cast. It may be a completely different. I personally, if they are going to do a second season, they need to just get rid of the whole entire cast. Sad to say. And the characters that actually, I connected with, which is Ruby and Montrose. Ruby's dead, and Montrose has no reason to live at this point.
Well, no, he has his grandson. Because remember, the note said you get a second chance on being a father.
But they just gonna kill him in the first episode, like Uncle George. I don't want to see that. Well, anyway, the theory is that they're gonna come up with another season, but I'm torn because I don't know if I want the same characters. Like, I don't.
I'm gonna say something that Sam may don't know, but I'm gonna say it. Okay, first things first. Lovecraft Country is on the lower end for HBO with ratings. Extremely low, actually. The last 2 episodes, like ratings dropped even worse in the episodes before it. This show is not pulling in an audience. Normally with HBO shows, what happens is as the season goes on, kind of like The Outsiders, because that's one, and even Watchmen, where an audience builds over episode over episode of episode. This actually lost audiences over episode over episode over episode. So if you're HBO, what the hell would be the point of bringing this show back? You niggas didn't like it the first time. They are not going to bring it back for a second season when you didn't watch it the first. This show, like in the key demo that every show needs, the show never did good numbers. And I know they were hoping after the first episode, they compared it to The Watchmen, so they were hoping it would build like The Watchmen. But the show just kept on falling more and more. You did a 0.67 last week in 18-49. Do you know how bad that is? That's not good at all. And if you're HBO, you're like, well, critics kind of liked it. Audience's reaction wasn't the best. The only saving grace would be if this show pulled in better ratings, and it didn't. What would be the point of holding it? Unless you're going to do it and drop it on HBO Max and say we don't care about ratings. That's the only hope. Because it can't air on HBO no more. Not again, not again, not again.
So the weird thing is, I thought the joint was an HBO Max show. Honestly, they probably should have made it because that's what I thought. Because around the same time the Raised by Wolves came out, and I was like, oh, okay, HBO Max. Wait, no, this is HBO.
Oh, and my bad. The 0.67 I talked about was not 1849. That was in total viewers. Like you gotta realize this show is not what they need right now. And again, maybe if it moves to HBO Max, you can move there with Raised by Wolves. No one knows Raised by Wolves ratings because you don't have to talk about that on HBO Max. Put it on HBO Max if you want to continue this show. But boy, you better come up with a story that makes sense. You better let Misha Green actually have control over this show. Get rid of Jordan Peele and any impact he possibly had on this show. He does not make good television shows.
J.J. Abrams.
Well, it's a bad robot show, technically. I don't know if you can get rid of him. Like, this is a bad robot show. This is not a Jordan Peele show. Jordan Peele took it to Bad Robot. That should tell you a lot. He took it to Bad Robot to be made. And you get this garbage-ass show. But, again, Jordan Peele has shown no talent in making shows. This nigga made one good movie, and y'all were willing to give him the keys to the kingdom to everything else. I saw Hunters on Amazon. It was bad, and this is just as bad as Hunters is. Like, but Misha is extremely talented. She's extremely talented. Let her have this show. If you're gonna continue it, give it to her and say, hey, we understand we shit the bed with the first season, but we're going to give this to you. You can make it however you want to. We're going to change the cast completely out. Let's try to build off of something with Lovecraft. Maybe we'll flip it that way. But like, you already pissed them people off because you had the biggest monster in Lovecraft's history you had in the first episode, and you gave no payoff at all with him. At all.
Not one bit at all. So this is my final thoughts on it. I didn't know anything about the number side of things. I do know I have a lot of different, friends that aren't like, critics or anything like that. They're like, oh my gosh, this show is so good. My wife has even been like, yo, everybody's been telling me Lovecraft is good. Can we watch? I was like, no, we can't watch. One, because for me, like from a spiritual standpoint, I don't want my wife dealing with this kind of witchcraft and stuff like that personally. But at the same time, I did break down to her and, my sister-in-law, like my real problems with the show, which is actively showcasing the era and not really fulfilling what the era really looks like, and fleeting emotional moments that they just sacrifice to just go and progress through it. I do think that there are some amazing actors and actresses in this film. I think there's some amazing performances. Like there's some great scenes in this. There's some great science fiction moments. Like episode 5, episode 6 were freaking amazing from a science fiction standpoint and as far as an emotional standpoint. First episode was actually pretty good for the most part. The weird thing about the first episode, and I looked at it again, my wife, that's the only episode I'm gonna let her see, is that there was more of racial reality in the first episode than the entire season. Like the first episode was where they were like, oh, whoa. Wait, what? A sundown town. What's that mean? Oh, wait, yo, the White House, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, they really went there and showed you the danger. Then the rest of the series, they sacrificed those raw emotional moments of the era for science fiction, supernatural stuff. And that was where I got disconnected. And maybe some people really didn't want to see those racially, triggering moments. But if you're going to go to that era, you have to go through it because that's reality, unfortunately. If not, you shouldn't have tried it. But to what Lucas is saying, I do think that if Misha has an opportunity to make a season 2, they should let her go all the way through it. I do think that they're going to get a season 2. If it ends up HBO Max, cool. But the show, to me, and the actors deserve better. And I don't know where to point the finger at. I think that's my biggest problem with this. Is where do you point the finger at? Because I can't just point the finger at Jordan. Somewhere down the line, when this got pushed through, or maybe midway pushed through, something went wrong. And I don't know where to point the finger at.
Whoever made the decision to separate from the book, that's who you point the finger at. Whoever made that decision.
And it's weird though, because I have plenty of people like you guys. Some of you guys love this show. And it's fine. There's nothing wrong. We're just giving you our real, unadulterated perspective on it as critics. That's it. That's all we're doing. So you're allowed to like the show. You're allowed to love the show. It's cool.
100%.
But we didn't love the show. I think I liked it more than Lucas did. But even with my likes, it's more so like moments that I liked, moments that I loved, not as a whole. Because if I go and put the whole entire picture through, the main antagonist, Christina, was resorted to nothing. And Tick was more of an antagonist than she was. And the purpose behind what was going on and the lineage and the blood, the purpose of their bloodline, it was sacrificed for exposition and furthering the story for whatever reason. Because that moment that they had with all the different relatives, like Tick's great-great-grandmother and his mother and the great-great-great-great-grandmother, like that was rushed so fast. In some kind of way, Letty just got the keys to the kingdom of knowledge, where that scene in and of itself, it should have been like, oh, they were there for 3 weeks and got all this information. Like, no, just those seconds. And she just knew everything now about casting spells. And
you're smart as Negro. I haven't told you. No issue.
It's just I don't know. Know.
I mean, in all honesty, to see it from a critic standpoint with no emotion attached to it, all I can say is, well, the writing isn't good. The performances are good. They have some beautiful shots in here. They ruined the soundtrack by going too contemporary with it instead of staying true to the time period, which could have made that could have elevated some moments beyond what we got here. But when you limit actors' ability to actually act, because that's what it feels like in this show, is that they purposely limited their ability to act, to emote emotion besides crying. You needed something besides despair as an emotion, and they never give it to you in this show. And because they don't, you don't get a good show. Also, when you have good source material, it is not a bright idea to stray away from the good source material. As Sam said, for a lot of people, the biggest impact happened in the first episode. The reason that biggest impact happens in the first episode, because that is the only episode that took everything from the book. Nothing in that first episode until you get to the end with the monsters, and not until you get to the house with the monsters, because monsters are in the first chapter in the book. But until you get to that point where they're in a house and they're eating up the cops the way they do, That's when it took over, and that's when you decided to stray away from your source material. Let this be a warning to anybody. When you're attempting to make something, you cannot stray away from the source material. If you do it, just take the characters and build a completely different story. It's nothing wrong with doing that. HBO has done that in the past. I just don't understand why they didn't do it here. And as Sam said, we are clearly looking for a party to blame. We need to pinpoint the person that made these decisions. I don't know, again, if it's the team at Monkey Paw, if it's the team at Bad Robot. I don't believe at all it's a team at HBO, because HBO is known for one thing and one thing only: not getting overly involved with people who do their shows.
Yep.
So to me, this is a production issue. Somebody decided to make these decisions. And when you made these decisions, you did it for one purpose and one purpose only. And it took me a while to realize what that purpose was. You all decided to dumb down science fiction for Black people because you were too scared. You were too scared to go full out sci-fi with Black people because you didn't think they would grab onto the show and love the show. So instead, you get this watered down version that a lot of people are going to like because, again, this may be their first exposure to this type of genre of television. So for them, this is great. But you have a complete different section of people who've been watching these type of shows for long periods of time, movies and shows. So they're expecting more from you. And whenever you decide to dumb down your material for an untapped audience as you see it, you lose everybody. And that's what's happening with this show. And that's the reason why you're not getting the audience that you would get, is because you made that decision.
Yeah. And this is my final thing, is that Lucas hit the nail on the head. Imagine a show like this if they didn't dumb down not just the science fiction side, but the African American history side. The actual era. Like every line of dialogue from every main character, them just walking down the street, them going and trying to get on the bus, them going and living life as a Black individual, or even in Christina's case, as a privileged white individual, a place of privilege. And interacting. Matter of fact, even her walking down the street, interacting with a Black woman.
No. A white woman in that time period doing anything that she's doing in this show would stick out, because women didn't have rights to do a lot of stuff back then. Yeah. Like, it's so many missed opportunities.
And it's like, imagine if they really took the time to let those moments really soak in. Bro, this could have been something.
Lady buying the house should have been one of the most powerful moments in this show. She was a Black woman who ends up getting the house in an all majority white neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's something that you need to stick on for a minute. Let that resonate with people. And then literally mix the horrors of racism with the horrors of sci-fi, and go all out and say, we're not going to hold anything back. Like, people are prepared for it. Amazingly, we can accept it. One thing about Black people is, if we feel it is 100% authentic, we will watch it. That's all we ask. That's all we ask. But you sugarcoated it. And you sugarcoated so much stuff. Why wasn't Emmett Till an actual character on this show if you were going to show his funeral? He should have been an actual character on the show. Take certain figures from that time period, put them in your show. It's fine to do that. No one's going to look at you like you're bad for doing it. We look at you like you're bad when you shoehorn stuff into a show like this. That's it. That's it. We're out. I'm not talking no more. This has been Lovecraft Country. HBO. 10 episodes.
Yeah, we could. I mean, we're not.
I could go on and on and on about this, because
we're not.
Again, Sam doesn't have my connection to this story. He doesn't. And a lot of you who like this show, you don't have my connection to this story. I've read this book 3 times since it came out. I love the story of the book. And as you were destroying it, it hurt. Like, I couldn't believe that because it's all there for you. It's kind of the same thing that you all out there in JVS land, you all feel when you watch certain superhero films come out or
Oh,
certain anime film. The way you all felt when Ghost in the Shell came out and the way that looked versus what you knew it should have been is the exact same feeling I have with Lovecraft Country. I knew what this should have been. And it's clear as day what it should have been. And then you decided to put a completely unnecessary version of it out. So it's the same feeling. That's it.
Yeah. Me and Lucas had like this random conversation about like Letty and Ruby and just how different, like from their complexion, you know what I'm saying? Like they look. And it's like that side of racial issue, like on self-hate, like that, like, okay, wait, who is Letty's mom? I mean, who is Letty's father? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this more deeper, you know, distrust because of her lighter skin? Or Letty having the conversation like, oh, well, I can go to the department store and get a job like that, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And like Ruby looking at her like, oh, you can you? It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like those things are real.
or Letty stripping away magic from all white people. Look. Because another discussion would need to be happening. Because when she said, because we own this now. So then are you going to attempt to go in the future and show that, well, we are in a world now where, you know, races mix often. How could one person own something of that nature?
It's impossible.
Yeah,
because nobody's purely
no one's purely black. No one is. I hate to tell you this, you're not.
It's not.
Nor are they purely white. So how? How, Sway? How is it going to go into just one group of people that kind of look a certain way?
What if somebody's albino? Do they have powers?
Would Mariah Carey not get powers? Would Jennifer Bells not get powers? Like, I need to know the limitations of only blacks have powers. Do they only get half powers if you're mixed? Like, how's that work?
Because it's kind of like, say hypothetically speaking, Christina like survived and had a child by a black person. Does her child
inherit magic because they're black?
But anyway, we're gonna go. We just wanted to give you guys our raw, unfiltered conversation. We're gonna put this up literally at 10 o'clock if it'll let us. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. Hope you guys are not completely offended. Know our hearts, and we will be back for some other series, possibly. We're talking.
Won't be a Lovecraft sequel. I know that much.
All right, guys. Oh, Lucas, where can everybody find you? Never mind. I'm just gonna answer that. You can find him on Twitter. Go to the description bar below. I put it on the link. You can go as far as Twitter, and he'll have reviews. We'll have reviews coming out from Middleburg, Virginia, with new movies that we were able to see just recently. So, peace, guys.